Hey guys, so this video is actually a really exciting video for me to film because I have been wanting to do this for like the past 2 years, but I have not been able to because I've been in a really big reading slump, and it's only until this year that I'm starting to kind of overcome it and actually starting to have more joy and wanting and desire to read books. So being able to finally film the mid-year book freakout tag is really exciting for me, and I realized as I was writing down all of the answers to all of the questions that pretty much all of the books I'm going to be talking about I read as ebooks, so I don't actually have the physical copy of them, but nevertheless I will just put up a little picture here of all of the books that I read. But yeah, so let's go ahead and get into it. And the first question is, what is the best book that you've read so far? And honestly, this was kind of hard, not because I had so many options, but because I feel like I don't really have that many options to choose from. I've definitely read some good books this year so far, but none of them have been really like a favorite or a really like high 5-star for me. But the ones that I did think of, one being the Apothecary Diaries manga, really interested in checking out. I didn't think I would love it as much as I do when I first picked it up, but I started reading the manga and I'm also watching the anime. So as I'm finishing, each volume, I'm watching that episode of the anime. So I'm like doing both in tangent with each other, and I'm loving it. Absolutely loving it, and I definitely recommend for anyone who's into like the period kind of manga stories and those that involve kind of like mysteries and solving with like a little bit of romance or possible romance. It's just a really good series, and it's definitely becoming one of my favorite manga series. And the other book that I read that was also a really fun read was Calling on the Matchmaker, or Calling the Matchmaker, something like that. This one I actually saw a little like teaser or synopsis on Instagram of somebody promoting the book, and that's essentially why I decided to check it out. And I was surprised to really enjoy it, and so much so that I'm really looking forward to the sequel, which is a companion sequel, and it's going to be following a sister of the main female protagonist in the first book. So those two would be like the best books, quote unquote, that I've read so far this year. The second question is, what is the best sequel that you've read so far? And I've actually haven't read that many sequels. I've mostly just started like new series this year, or I've been reading the standalones. But the one that came to mind was one of the sequels for the Wayward Children series, which specifically being the Lost in the Moment and Found. That one is so far like my top 3 favorite of this Wayward Children series. That one I really liked. I listened to it on audiobook early this year, and I still think about it to this day. So that one was really, really fun, and it's definitely like high on the list of my favorite books from that series. The third question is, what is a new release that you haven't read yet but really want to? And honestly, I don't really keep up with releases. I'm not exactly sure which ones have come out this year. I do know that I really want to read the T. Kingfisher, what was it called? Place for Good Bones or something like that. I don't know if that came out this year though. And I'm also really interested in Leigh Bardugo's The Familiar, but I haven't read Leigh Bardugo yet. I haven't read the Shadow and Bone series or the Six of Crows series, and I really want to read that first before I continue with any of her other works. So I don't know if I'm going to get to The Familiar this year. But yeah, but those are really like the only ones I can think of. I mean, I don't really keep up with the new releases, so I'm not exactly sure what would be a good answer for this one. But anyway, those are some that I am like interested in. The next question would be, what is the most anticipated release for the second half of the year? And for this one, I have two answers. The first one being, like I mentioned earlier, the sequel to Calling on the Matchmaker, which is called Saved by the Matchmaker. I loved the first one so much, and in the first one, there was a little like preview at the end of it of the second book, and I'm really interested in the male love interest in there. Like, he seems like a really big softie, and I know that the sister who's going to be the female protagonist, she is like really like spunky, and she's very like rebellious and independent, so I'm really interested to see how that dynamic is going to work out. The second most anticipated release is going to be The 13th Child by Erin A. Craig, which wrote one of my all-time favorite books, House of Salt and Sorrows. And that one I'm really looking forward to because it looks very dark and gothic and very almost like gothic manor, that kind of vibe, which I love. And if it's anything like House of Salt and Sorrow, I already know I'm going to really enjoy it because the atmosphere in that book is just amazing, and the whole like eeriness and horror elements that are incorporated were just fantastic. Absolutely loved it. So I know anything that they write, I'm going to enjoy. Next question is, what was the biggest disappointment that you read so far this year? And for this one, I actually have three. One of them was Bride by Ali Hazelwood, and this was my first Ali Hazelwood, to be fair. So I don't know, maybe this one just wasn't the right fit, and I know this one was like her first paranormal story, so maybe that's part of the reason why, but it just felt very lackluster to me, and it was just a very like meh book. Like, it wasn't amazing. It was a fun read, but it was overall pretty forgettable. So that one was pretty disappointing, especially because I know so many people love Ali Hazelwood and praise her and her writing. So I don't know, maybe it was just this book. And I do still want to check out some of her other stories. Like, I really want to read Love Theoretically. So I am still going to give her a chance. But just this one in particular was just not a fave. And then the other book was Thornhedge by T. Kingfisher. I thought I was going to really like this one because it's a fantasy book, and it was kind of like inspired by Sleeping Beauty and like Rapunzel, kind of. And I love T. Kingfisher's fantasy books more so than their horror books. But this one also felt really flat for me, and I really wanted more from it. I felt it was very predictable, and I think that's part of the reason why it just wasn't really a great fit for me. Final book was called Married to a Pirate. This one I was really interested in because I love pirates, and I was really hoping for a fun, very like sea heavy adventure, and especially because they teased the idea of like Greek myths and gods and sirens and all of those kind of like mythological creatures being involved, but I just felt like so much was happening that it was never fully flushed out, and it kind of just lost me. It lost me like halfway through, and it just was not it just was not it. It was not what I wanted from a pirate book, unfortunately, because I really do love pirates, and in any kind of book that involves like sea adventures out at sea, like I typically always enjoy them, but this one was just also not it. Just a lot of like disappointments, but also just kind of like lackluster stories. The next question is, what were the biggest surprise that you read this year? And for this one, I actually have two. I have Our Crooked Hearts and Six Crimson Cranes, which I actually did independent vlogs for each of these books because these are book subscription box books that I got like a few years ago now that I still had not read, and I'm doing like this series where I'm pushing myself to read these books that I've had for so long that I just haven't picked up. And these two have really surprised me because they are YA, and I don't typically read YA anymore just because I feel like I've read so much and so many stories encapsulate very similar themes and ideas. I'm just kind of over them. Really surprised that I thoroughly enjoyed these stories and that these stories actually held my attention all the way through from start to finish. So these are top like these are high like 4-star reads, but they're definitely not favorites, but I still really enjoyed them. The next couple questions that are in the tag, I don't really have answers to, those being a new fave author, new fave crush, and a book that made you cry. For the new favorite author, I really don't have one that's like new, because I would say the author who wrote like A Sign of Affection, but they're technically not new to me because I started reading Sign of Affection last year. So I don't know, I feel like that's kind of cheating, but if I had to pick an answer, it would be that. And then a new crush, again, I don't have one. The only one I can think of is Itsumi from A Sign of Affection, but again, they're not really new. But yeah, I'm still gonna pick him because he's really the only male character that has stood out to me from all of the books that I've read so far. And then I haven't been reading books that are like emotional or that have themes that would bring me to tears, so I really don't have an answer for this one either. And then a book that made you happy. And honestly, for this one, it's really just down to two. It's A Sign of Affection series, which I always talk about on this channel. Book video or regular like lifestyle video, I just always bring them up because I just love them. I love that story so much. I love those characters. And then the second one would be Apothecary Diaries, which is a new favorite, or it's becoming like an all-time favorite. So those are really the only two that have made me really happy, and those are really the only two that I would reread over and over again. I have been rereading A Sign of Affection over and over again. I think this is like my third or fourth time rereading it from the beginning. And then Apothecary Diaries, I could definitely see myself like rewatching the anime, especially like over again. Because that one's just so fun and it's so interesting. I love it so much. Alright, the next question is, what are the most beautiful books that you've bought so far this year? And I actually have two of them, and these ones I do own physically, so give me 1 second, I'll go get them. Alright, so two beautiful books that I've bought so far this year are A Tempest of Tea and A Feather So Black. And both of these are very loot editions from book subscription boxes, but I just bought them secondhand over on Pango. And look at how, hold on, look at how absolutely stunning these are. I'm sure if you have these, you already know how beautiful they are, but if you haven't seen them, they are absolutely stunning, and I'm actually really excited to read these because this one is definitely one of my favorite authors. And this one I'm just really excited to read because it just sounds really good. So those are two beautiful books I bought. And then the final question is, what books do you still need to read this year? And honestly, all of them. Literally all of the books that I have talked about on this channel that I keep saying are on my TBR, that I keep saying that I'm going to get to eventually. All of the books that I physically own, because I'm really trying to read those, and just because, you know, so many of my physical books I've had for years, like I've had since like 2018, 2019, and I still haven't read them, which is just atrocious. So I really want to go those. And I also told myself that I am on a book buying ban until I read at least 5 physical books. I cannot read or I cannot buy any new book until I read at least 5. It doesn't matter if I don't like them, I just have to read them. That's it. Okay, so those are all of the questions from the book freakout tag, but I did want to go over some of my reading stats overall for this year. So, in order to do that, we are going to look at my Book Modi app, which gives me all of the stats, like all of the books that I've read, all of the pages that I've read, and all of that. So, alright, so far, I have read 40 books, and my goal for this year was to read 20. So I'm already, read double the books that I wanted, which is great. And I read 2 books in January, 12 in February, 8 in March, 6 in April, 9 in May, and 3 so far in June. And June is almost over, so I'm probably not going to read too many more. So June is going to be one of the lower months, but that's okay. So I read an average of 6.7 books per month, and my most read month was February. I have a 3.9 average star rating, and the biggest book that I've read, or the book with the most pages that I've read, was Glow of the Everflame. And then I don't think it tells me how many pages I read. Let me see. The biggest amount of books I've read have been ebooks. I've read 22 ebooks, 13 audiobooks, and then 5 paperbacks. Alright, so I've read a total of 9,528 pages. On average, I read 238 pages. Yeah, like I said, the book with the most pages was Glow of the Everflame. The second book with the most pages was 6 Crimson Cranes with 454 pages. So yeah, so I have been reading quite a lot. I have been reading a lot. Like I said, I haven't been reading a lot of favorites, or I haven't been finding a lot of favorites. But that's okay, because I do think that I eventually will, once I start reading some more physical books that I have on my TBR, because a lot of those I do predict are going to be either high 4 stars or hopefully 5 stars. And yeah, so that is it for the mid-year book freakout tag. I cannot believe we're already halfway through the year. And I'm really excited to see what else I'm going to read and see what other books I'm going to enjoy in the second half of the year. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!